Boris Johnson could fly to the U.S. next month to meet with President Donald Trump, his spokesman has confirmed, with talks on a lucrative post-Brexit trade deal between London and Washington potentially on the agenda. Speaking to journalists at today's Downing Street briefing, the Prime Minister's spokesman said Mr. Johnson could meet the U.S. President in Washington next month when he travels to the U.S. for the G7. The G7 meeting summit of world leaders is due to take place from June 10 to 12 at Camp David in Washington. Downing Street said it is in close contact with the White House about the event, and is keeping a close eye on the situation over the coming days. On Thursday, the Mr. Johnson's official spokesman said, the Prime Minister's official spokesman said yesterday, "We are in close contact with the U.S. in the run-up to the summit. We will need to look at the details of what the U.S. are proposing. Hosting arrangements for the G7 are a matter for the country that holds the current G7 presidency, in this case the U.S. The PM continues to work with the G7 to ensure a coordinated international response to the coronavirus pandemic." Downing Street also said Mr. Johnson would follow guidelines around international travel during the current coronavirus crisis. But it is not clear whether the Prime Minister would have to enter a quarantine period of 2 weeks following his return to the UK and following the latest travel advice released earlier this week. Travel restrictions are now in place for passengers from Europe. The continent is home to 4 of the G7 nations, the UK, France, Germany and Italy. The US and neighbouring Canada have now agreed to keep their shared border closed to all non-essential travel until at least June 21 in a further step to limit the spread of coronavirus. But Mr. Trump is determined to go ahead with the G7 summit. The U.S. President tweeted, "Now that our country is transitioning back to greatness, I am considering rescheduling the G7, on the same or similar date, in Washington, D.C., at the legendary Camp David. The other members are also beginning their comeback. It would be a great sign to all, normalization." The visit comes as the UK looks to ramp up negotiations with the US on a post-Brexit trade deal.